Okay, welcome to everybody. Our first Keola Moola Book Club and Wealth Club discussion. The purpose of the Wealth Club is to get a community of people that's interested in saving and growing their wealth, but also in life as such, together and share with them some wisdom from specifically books that we have read, and also then get the input of the participants, and then also from time to time get some of the authors of the books to come and talk to us, and to get some specialists also to share knowledge with us. The intention is that from a book club viewpoint, we'll try and share one book a month with you. We'll put up the events up front so that if you also want to read the book and come and have a discussion with us as participants of the Wealth Club, you're more than welcome. And you'll see there's a questions bar on your screen. You can put questions as we go through the discussion, which we will deal with. So we welcome your participation as part of the session. I myself, Hendrik Crawford, I've been in the financial industry for the past 30 years and specifically exploring financial coaching as such, and looking at why we do not create wealth, and what is the barriers for us to create wealth, and how can we make it easier for ourselves to create wealth for the last 10 years, and specifically focusing on finances the last 5 years. And I've got two panelists this morning with us, Mornay Bender and Casper Maria. I'll ask Mornay first just to introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I'm fairly new to the financial industry. I started this year at Momentum, and I finished my honors degree in entrepreneurial management last year. Before that, I did my BCom degree in entrepreneurship, and I'm currently busy with my postgraduate diploma in financial planning. I'm very excited for what the future holds, and yeah, that's me in short.
Casper, over to you. Thanks, Mornay.
Hello, everybody. My name is Casper Maria. I'm from a small town in the Free State and was basically raised in Bloemfontein. So I'm born and bred in the Free State from where the peculiar accent. I have been in the financial industry for 9 years. Also fairly new with Momentum now. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell, short and nutshell even.
Thanks, Casper. So the question is most probably, why did we pick the next Millionaire Next Door? For quite a few of you on the webinar today, most probably would resemble that the first Millionaire, or that there was a book that came out, The Millionaire Next Door, in 1996. And the next Millionaire Next Door is then a follow-up on the first Millionaire Next Door. And basically what the authors tried to do was look and did research on to say, is the fundamentals that was applied in the Millionaire Next Door and the findings they had there, does that still apply to the world we're living in today? And that's also the reason for our diverse panel, is to say, let's bring thought leadership in across age groups so that we can also see how we most probably across age groups look differently at financial planning as such, and at wealth building and wealth creation. I personally perhaps prefer the term building prosperity more than wealth building, because I think, like I said initially, as from a Keola Moola Book Club and Wealth Club viewpoint, we would like also to bring forth thoughts on the balance between creating wealth, but also having a life. It's not always about return on investment, but it's also return on life. So how do we live a life of purpose? If we look at perhaps just to recap in terms of Millionaire Next Door initially, what they found was to say that the real millionaires in America was not necessarily the people with the large cars and living in large homes, but there was a big percentage of the millionaires, dollar millionaires in America, that was normal people living normal lives. So what helped them do that? And the first principle was they lived well below their means. They allocated time, energy, and money efficiently in ways that build wealth. So the focus was not so much on flow of income and funds, but on building a balance sheet, and that balance sheet specifically generating income and capital growth for them. They believe that financial independence is more important than displaying high social status. So most of these millionaires, actually nobody, not even the neighbor, knew that they were really wealthy. Then what was interesting is their parents didn't give them a wealth, or they didn't come from inheritance, but grew their wealth as individuals. And then a big one which have got an impact, we will not in that depth discuss it today, but it's definitely, if we look at research in South Africa, it's got a specific impact in South Africa, but also worldwide, if we look at the research, is that the adult children are economically self-sufficient. And I think that's also creating a culture of entrepreneurship, which is important, because we see the current research in South Africa shows that a large portion of the South African economic active population actually have got 3 households that live from each other's budgets and income, which makes it very difficult then to build wealth. They are proficient in target market opportunities, so a large portion of these individuals actually are driving or having their own small business, taking up entrepreneurship. And the other portion of them were doing jobs which they actually loved doing. So they were not just at a job to get the paycheck at the end of the month. So that was the principles of the original Millionaire Next Door. So let's stop for a moment and say, in the Millionaire Next Door, they brought out a formula to say, if you apply a rule of thumb, then you can take your current age times your current income times 0.1. So if I say I'm 35 years old, which I wish I was still, times 240,000, my annual salary or current income, times 0.10, that gives us 840,000 Rand. So take a moment and just do your own calculation. Then I'm going to put up a poll. The poll will not display your name. It's an anonymous poll, and then you can say, if you compare the figure that you got there, does that give you income? Is your total current investments more than, in this example, 840,000, or less than the 840,000? So have you acquired enough money then, or wealth at this point in time, or are you still stretching yourself to get to that point? We'll give another 30 seconds for that. Nice, we've got a few people that's already on track, which could most probably share a few thoughts with us through the questions and answers as we go through, whether they agree or don't agree with the content that we're going to share from the book as a book summary. Okay, I'm going to share with you then the results. Everybody did not participate, but let's look then at the results. So 33% of the people said they're already there. They've accumulated enough money. They in the category of good savers or wealth builders. And then 67% said that they would still like to build wealth, which is interesting if we look at the research done by UNISA and the Momentum Financial Wellness Index, is that only 23% of South Africans is financially well off, and which means they can pay their bills each month, and they've got emergency fund which can cover 12,000 rand if something happens and they don't have to delve into their credit cards. So the book then refers to under accumulators of wealth and produce accumulators of wealth. The principle then which they found in is achieving any major goal, including financial independence, require disciplined action over time and awareness of one's own ability, the effective allocation of resources and diligent management of it. And we'll go into detail of that. As I then said, the next millionaire next door was then Stanley and his daughter Sarah Fallow started writing the book to see what happened since the first book, and also looking at what stopped people from growing capital. And then also there was a lot of criticism on the initial or the original book to say what of that criticism that was there is valid and what not. Unluckily, Stanley was killed in a motorcar accident before they could publish the next millionaire next door. However, his daughter continued then to write the book and publish it. One of the principles or thoughts that came from the book is to say economic independence belongs to those with the willingness to allocate money, energy, and cognitive resources to achieving their financial goals. Interesting, if we look at a research study that was done in America and a subsequent study in South Africa basically confirmed that is that the two biggest drivers for creating financial wellness or for people to create wealth is then locus of control. And so applying yourself and having the discipline to save. And secondly, having the knowledge to make the right financial decisions that will support you building wealth. If we then dive into is the first interesting thought, and it's in such a discussion we'll just highlight some of the highlights we found from the book, is something that they call financial independence or retire early or FIRE. What that then referred to was initially in America, Mr. Mustache Man was a young person that said, but he doesn't want to work until 60 so that he's got enough money to give him in financial freedom. However, he would like to save up and then have enough money to do what he wants to do. So that's where FIRE then comes from, financial independence or retire early. So at this point in time, I perhaps want to also get the panel in, and perhaps again, Mornay, if I can start with you there. What was your thoughts on FIRE and financial independence, retirement early when reading the book?
I quite enjoyed it because I feel like the younger generations, they don't see it in the same way as you have to work to 65 or older just to sustain yourself and your standard of living. So from my perspective, it's easy because you can still continue working, but you still have that capital and that financial freedom to fall back on. Because if you love what you do, you're gonna work till you're very old. But some people don't. They just want to work till they're 25 or 35, and then they want to go travel the world and enjoy their life, see what's out there. So from my perspective, I quite liked it. Yeah, over to you, Casper.
Hendrik, just to explain my opinion with a little background. Ever since I started working, I was by far the youngest among a lot older people, and it's been like that ever since. So I'm sort of with them in believing that our generation is a bunch of aliens from another planet, which they don't completely understand. The correct term that I wrote down here was we tend to be on a hyper-spending treadmill. We try to keep up with appearances. We are very influenced on what the neighbor or the friend or the family member buys. So when I read about this FIRE community in the book, it was the first time I even heard of it. So the whole concept is very new to me. But yeah, it's good news. Like Mornay said, I also like it. I think it's very important. Say again.
I said something to strive towards.
It is. I think it's a type of a leadership that I hope and I think we'll see developing very soon. Because that's what every young person below the age of, let's make it 35, needs to strive towards. I think it's something. I think it's something we can definitely look up to, and it's fundamentals that we all need to employ in our daily lives.
Thanks, Casper. Thanks, Mornay. I think I want to add a little bit to this. We also have got some of you on as participants now. We've got the Keola Moola board game also, and it's definitely I saw with Generation Z and Millennials specifically, where a certain group of them will definitely say, but if they look at the game and playing the game, they say, but help me to retire at 35. Help me retire to retire, and I now use the retire, but be financially independent is most probably help me to be financially independent by 35 or 40. But interesting on FIRE or financial independence for the people that's a little bit more matured like myself is there's a whole movement which started interesting Ken Blanchard in America with which they call refire, is then to say what happens to people that then was part of the older generation that was conditioned in terms of I must work until 60, 65. And I see there's somebody that also in the South African context trademark the refire concept, but that's then focusing on how do I still keep active? Because I think to Mornay's point is, and I think that for me personally, from the looking at the FIRE movement, is to say how do I live a life of purpose that I can do what I love and then also be financially independent to support me and to do it, perhaps doing fun things. And I think with the FIRE movement and the refire movement, it's both is how do you become part of a community of people that's thought leaders in terms of this and can help me with thoughts on this. And I think that's one of the things that we would love to do from a Keola Moola book financial book club and a financial club viewpoint is to create a community there where we can share such thoughts. Interesting in South Africa, we've got one person that's labeled as part of the financial independence. If you Google his name, he's also got a website where he shares some of his thoughts. Peter McKay, and yeah, so it's not just something that the Americans is doing. We see it then in our Keola Moola games, but also there is people that's doing it as such. And living a purposeful life, but is not so much dependent on what Casper referred to is the hamster in the wheel that's just running after money, but living a more fulfilled life. A second thought, which was actually also part of the original Millionaire Next Door, but stood out for me, was the portion around myths of wealth in the book, but also then the introduction to this chapter before we get to some of the myths is where they specifically highlight the including the confusion between income and net worth. And I think it's, if we look, and I've been, before my current world that I'm working in, I've worked, what was it, nearly 26 years in corporate, and I saw that there, to a large extent, you just work for the next bigger bonus, for the next position with a larger income, but you're not building net worth. So income does not equal net worth. And I think that's an important distinction for us to put in the back of our minds to say, what am I doing with my cash flow or income? And am I building in the process net worth or financial independence, back to FIRE? Or am I just, to Casper's point, keeping up with the Joneses? And then they had a few specific things around myths around financial planning. So, which they highlight in the book. Mornay, perhaps over to you again. Yeah, so what thoughts came up when you were reading that part of the book on your side?
Yeah, the myth that said income is not equal to net worth, I totally agree with that, because we see so many people living paycheck to paycheck. They may drive a nice car, live in a nice home, but they still have to pay off that home, have to pay off the car. So they're not actually building wealth. They're more in for the show rather. So yeah, I totally agreed. I don't think we see it because we see the people living in a nice, we see them living in a nice car. We presume they have a lot of money, they are rich, they are wealthy, which is not necessarily the case. Maybe they still have outstanding 15 years on the house, or the car is, some payments are overdue. I totally agree with that myth. I thought the book highlighted it very well. Yeah, that is my thoughts on it.
Casper, over to you, your thoughts.
Indrek, after I've read the book, whenever I see a nice car driving by or somebody wearing expensive jeans or something, I can't help but think that money could have gone into the savings account rather. I don't know if it's wrong to think that way, but this book completely changed my mind about a few things. Something I wrote on top above myths before I went into each one of them a little bit deeper is actually a quote that the author wrote down. Ultimately, your ability to build and grow wealth will be in what you do, not what is in your head. Earlier on, they also speak about it's not about how intelligent you are. It's all about your actions and what you do on a month-to-month basis, how you spend. If I can just go into a few of these myths. For me personally, these myths, they just sound like a bunch of excuses, to be brutally honest. And it's something I'm proud to say I'm not really guilty of, because looking at the bigger picture, the point of building wealth, it's up to you, and you can't use excuses like the group you're in. Actually, the third myth is you can. The second myth is
It's income equals wealth.
Sorry, Mornay, just repeat.
The second myth was income equals wealth.
No, sorry, I'm confused now. The fifth myth that I want to talk about is, if I can't make it, I'll blame the rich. It's an excuse. The whole book boils down to spending your money as you're supposed to. And these myths, I can't help but think of them as excuses. If you can't spend the money as you're supposed to, there's always going to be a reason you can fall back onto. I don't know if you agree. I don't know if you agree with me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Mornay, you can go.
Yeah, I wanted to add to one of the myths. There's one that says the rich don't pay their fair share. I think it's 4 or 3, I'm not sure. But it basically says that the people have a perception that the rich pay less taxes, they avoid taxes more. I don't agree with that statement at all, because usually most of them are just have better tax practitioners, have better ways of maybe putting the income into sources that are tax-free. So yeah, that was the myth that I disagree to the most. But yeah, with Casper's one on myth 5, if you can't make it, you can blame the rich. It also falls to that one where they say the rich don't pay their fair share. The people perception about people that are wealthy or I think totally skewed, and yeah, they should be more educated regarding the fact that rich people probably live below their means. They don't drive the fancy cars, they don't live in the fancy houses.
Yeah, I think it's very true. I want to pick up on two things that you said. The one that comes up for me is that interesting. There's research that was done on our money personalities, which referred to how our attitude towards money. And I think these myths to a large extent link for me back to those, because it's most probably money personalities or our attitude towards money that creates this picture in our own minds that derail us then, instead of taking ownership, or back to locus of control, taking ownership of that I want to achieve. So I think that's the one thing that if one starts with the excuses is to say, but back to the old model in terms of neuroscience is, if I've got an excuse, I know what the problem is and I can actually go and design the answer for it. And then the other point that you touched on is the richest don't pay their dues. I think the one thing is, which most probably the paradox for me in that one is, I think the rich or people with capital or entrepreneurs can normally plow back into the community, the most of them. It's one of the principles of making you happy is not to only give money back, but also give time and money back, which then helps to grow wealth to the larger community. But I think it's part of the wisdom of how do you invest your money so that you invest it in a way that you don't pay unnecessary taxes. So it's also, I think the lesson there is to say, how can you optimize your investment so that you can get the best return. We've got a question that I just want to throw in, Casper, and then I'll come back to you. What is wealth? Is it only cash, investments, or does it include fixed assets as well? Interesting. There was a piece of research done specifically on budgets, and we'll most probably discuss that book in one of our future sessions by Sarah Newcomb, in terms of loaded in terms of budget, but specifically she refers to, she splits assets to say asset is something that can create the income for you. So it becomes something that generate income for you. So your home which you stay in, which you are still paying a payment or a monthly payment on due to the fact that you've still got debt on it, it's not necessarily an asset. But if you've got a share portfolio which gives you a dividend and gives you capital growth, that will be asset, and we will then most probably qualify or put that out as wealth. I don't know, Mornay and Casper, any thoughts on that one from your side?
No, I totally agree with you, Hendrik. Yeah, your wealth would include all your assets as well.
Casper, did you have a question before or wanted to make a comment on my previous?
I also agree. No, I wanted to just give a quote on something Warren Buffett said. He said that millionaires know that the more they spend, the more income they must realize. Income taxes. To build wealth, minimize realized, or in brackets, taxed income, and maximize unrealized without a cash flow. So on the point that both of you made of, it's not that rich people are not paying their share, they just maybe smarter with their money than.
I think that's very true.
Yeah.
If we move a little bit to a large part of the book is around being frugal, which initially gave me such a shiver down my spine, where later in the book they get to a point where they then give a definition, which frugal was also a term which came from the original book. And however, it came to a point where they refer to being frugal is living below your means as such. And I think that's a crucial point, because that also links back then, Casper, to your point that you made, which Warren Buffett referred to. And if we think about of that, being of that part of the book specifically, you know, something comes up for me to say, what is the influence of the system we live in? So the people I work with, the community I live in, the influence of my wife if I'm married, the influence of my friends, and also then most probably to our earlier discussion of money types and money scripts specifically, is then how does that influence our ability, and that comes also back to then locus of control, but how does that influence us in our everyday lives to be wiser with how we engage and being more mindful in terms of how we engage with our finances and making financial decisions? If I can drop over to you again, Mornay.
Yeah, Hendrik, to a very great extent, maybe they could have lessened it a little bit. They talk about clipping out coupons and such. We don't have newspaper coupons a lot. But yeah, living below your means, I feel having a budget first is the first step. Make sure you track your expenses, you track your income. But you should also enjoy life. It shouldn't be living to the budget exactly, never spending a little bit more on maybe a nice dinner with yourself and your significant other. So I feel it has to have a balance, like everything in life. It shouldn't be too skewed to the one side and nothing to the other. You should track your expenses. Live below your means. Don't spend excessively. Spend only what you can afford, but not to the effect where you start affecting your own life. We don't enjoy life. You go for the last cent. It must be exactly like that. Yeah, that was my thoughts on the book regarding frugalness.
Thoughts from
Or
your
Nate,
side,
to
Casper?
your point, I always thought, because the older people in my life up to now has preached to me about being frugal and not spending unnecessarily, and then I always thought to myself, why do you earn an income if you can't use it? And if you must spend everything but you can't use your spending money, what's the use? Then I read the book, and well, a lot of things hit me between the eyes, but actually throw a klip in die bos by saying that some of the research they did, some of the numbers, some of the millionaires they interviewed, only 61 of them fully believe that they should live below their means, which, given the kind of undertone of the book, it was quite a surprise to me. I thought that number would be a lot higher. So I went to see what is the most important traits, and they gave both the statistics of 1998 and the statistics of the last study. I think even of the one of the traits, but above all else, well disciplined. So, Hendrik, sorry if I'm a bit upstream now, but something I picked up in this section is, out of the millionaires that they interviewed, 61% of them believe in living below your means. However, 91% of them believe that well-disciplined is of utmost importance, and that's actually what it takes to create wealth. In the beginning as well, of enjoying the fruits of your labor, if I can call it that. This book is quite straight to the point, I feel. So the whole time when I was reading it, they say, they give you a scenario of what people are currently doing, and then I hope to read, it's okay to do that. But they keep coming back to, no, it's wrong. So, but then I also picked up that all these people that they interviewed, the millionaires, or the millionaires next door, as they call them, all of them got to where they are on their own. They got there by specifically not listening to other people, because the people around them are spenders. They are the people on the hyper spending treadmill. So I agree with Mornay in a sense that you have to somehow, if you are naughty for designer coffee, it in your budget, it must be there. You must spoil yourself now and then. I also think it's just important to note in your head that money that you're spending for that coffee should have actually gone into your savings account. But if you're still fine with it, I don't see a problem. I think you'll eventually still end up where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, I think to your point, the important part is I personally fall into that category to say, you must also give yourself recognition for staying with your plan. And if there's something that's because, and I think that comes back to a purpose-driven life and building prosperity rather than just wealth is you must also enjoy the journey. It doesn't help. It's, if we take, we've got so many examples of people that said, we'll one day do something and then they pass away before one day comes, and then they build wealth and they could not enjoy it. So I think they definitely both of your points is important. The one question perhaps, or one thought that came up, Mornay, when you said we don't get coupons, that's most probably your Woolies rewards and your loyalty program at your bank and at your insurance company. Is how can you use that to maximum benefit? I think that's most probably in our time. So that's perhaps something else I didn't thought about it when we read the book, but when you were saying cutting out coupons, then there is modern ways of it. Thanks. I see one of our participants also say you must definitely reward yourself when you get to your targets, and I agree 100%. And I think Casper just reiterated also is the principle to a large extent is most probably two core things, and the one is the discipline to stick or to have a plan and the discipline to stick to that plan, and then that compound interest and dividends does its work for you to build your capital. An interesting concept which they've got in the book, before we get to some input from all of you and the value you each took out of the book, is perhaps just to stand still on the household CFO or household chief financial officer, is to say somebody in a household need to take that responsibility to help craft and design that plan for the household, and then also to ensure that the household then build according to the plan that was put out, and to ultimately achieve where then ultimately the family or the household can get to a point of financial independence. Any thoughts from yourselves when you read that section?
Since I'm still not married yet, so I focus on my own financial. I have a girlfriend, and we stick to a budget and so forth. But it didn't resonate that much to me. But I can see the practical side of it. There must be someone in the household that that keeps track of the finance and make sure the spending is not excessive. I think they had an example in the book of one wife that husband had to have a spending account, so they organized their financials in that matter, because he's not great with finances, but she gave a portion or made sure he had a portion so he can go spend it to his heart's desire. So I feel that is a very important role in the household, because at the end of the day, if you're married, you're building a future together, building wealth together. No matter, doesn't matter who's in charge and so forth. You work together to accumulate wealth. That's my thoughts on it.
Thanks, Mornay. Casper, thoughts from your side?
I may be using our household as a bit of an example, but my wife is the one she writes down everything. She keeps the slips. She keeps track of everything. She's our CFO. Without her, we would completely be in the dark. We would not know, and I'm specifically referring to budget. If you don't keep track of your budget, eh, you'll never achieve any financial goals. I think the setting up of the budget and making of decisions is very important that both the the husband and wife or the partners or whatever agree and that they are both on board. Um, but I think it's as far as the continuous tracking of specifically budgets go. I think it's important that one person takes over the responsibility, especially in our household, because I'm the type of guy that forgets to tell his wife that we're going to the cricket tonight. And then I'm mad at her when she's not ready when I get home. So me and finances, I'm not the type to keep track of it in a good enough way. So yeah, I think just to recap, CFO is, I don't know how people do it without one. Somebody needs to keep track, somebody needs to keep the eye on the goal. But I think it's very important that everybody involved has got the same goal and everybody's on board and also involved in the forming of the goal.
Thanks, Casper. Thanks, Mornay. I think, Casper, what comes up when I listen to you is something also which they talk about specifically around the household CFO, or then to Mornay's point where he's his own CFO, is also to understand my strengths and play my strengths and outsource that, or get somebody else then to help you walk the journey where you know you're not good at, because that's one of the roles of the chief financial officer is overall understand the plan, draft the plan, stay to the plan, and then also is to say, how do you make investments? How do you follow up the investments, and how do you outsource to like a financial advisor, a financial coach, to support you on that journey is a critical part of that, to understand your strengths and play according it. Talking about competencies and playing your strengths is they data points then have developed a wealth building competency questionnaire, which is psychometric based, where they found that the following competencies is the main competencies in terms of what you need to build wealth: confidence, frugality, responsibility, social indifference, focus, and planning. And part of that then is the key drivers competencies that you need. And then also if one think of it, is confidence is knowledge, which we talked earlier about, having somebody to support you in terms of process. Frugality, how do you mindfully spend money, think about before you spend money, sticking to your plan. And I just a thought on a budget. Somebody the other day shared a thought with me which makes total sense, because budget, I think, got such a bad name over time, and it immediately feels like frugality as such, which we said earlier. In Afrikaans we say being suinig. It feels like that. It's where they said a budget is most probably a better name is a prosperity plan, because a budget is actually the thing that must fund you towards being financially independent. Responsibility, we talked about the chief financial officer taking responsibility. Social indifference, not worrying about your neighbors. Focus, again, keeping to your plan, having a concerted effort across householding to drive growing wealth. And then planning, and I think an important part where we miss it sometimes is, and it goes back to the hamster in the hamster wheel is we then just start focusing on the return of investment and how can I earn more money is understanding what is one's values and what is one's purpose, and then working towards that goals that you've got, which will give you a deep value for life as such, and drive your energy and effort. In the follow-up mail you'll get tomorrow after attending the conference, you'll find a link to a free assessment that you can do to test your own competencies against this. And if you are perhaps looking at the live stream that was recorded on Facebook and YouTube, you can go to our website, coaching.co.za, and on the blog there's a link to the wealth building questionnaire where you can also go and do it. Any thoughts on these competencies if you look at these, Mornay, that came up for you?
Yeah, Hendrik, the focus one and the planning one is on my side is the most important for me. I think I have a little bit of OCD, so planning is is a critical part. I know how my day is going to go from the morning till the end at night. So I think when you talk about finances, you should also use the same, I feel, method. Be meticulous, and if you can't do that, get someone that can. Get a well-known accountant or a good accountant, or like in Casper's case, his wife. Someone has to take that role. If you're both good at it, great. Then do it independently. But the planning and then the focus, I see it in a way that I have to focus to my next goal. What do I want to be? What do I want to earn by, let's say, 30? What do I want my net worth to be by the age of 30? Yeah, so that's just quick off my head.
Casper, your side.
Hendrik, again, with I think the whole purpose of the book, or the undertone, if I can call it that, is living below your means. There must be money left at the end of the month to spend. Maybe not the perfect way of explaining it, but in saying that, social indifference, I think, is very important, especially for people of my generation. We are at a time where we're starting a family. Most of us have bought a house now, and I think a lot of us, maybe myself included, have fallen into the trap of keeping up with the Joneses and now finding ourselves in that financial hamster wheel. So that's something, if you're going to trust and accept what the book tells you, which I think I'm definitely going to do, is you're going to have to become socially indifferent. You should no longer want what your neighbor or your family wants, because that's not having the thing that you've bought in your hands should no longer be the source of your joy. The source of your joy should be putting the money away, actually building your wealth. So social indifference is the one that spoke to me.
Yeah, interesting on social indifference. Perhaps two quick thoughts is there's a lady, Marie Kondo, which works on just having what she says, when one buys something or have something in one's house, it must give you joy. So, and I think that's the benefit of, if you're social indifferent, you can focus on whatever gives you joy, and it's because something else that gives your neighbor joy or gives your outlaws joy not necessarily will give you joy. So what is those things that will really deep down in terms of your values give you joy? In summary, perhaps each of you, when we get to a closing in terms of our discussion, we've got more or less 5-6 minutes left. What is your key takeouts from the book for our participants today and somebody that afterwards will listen to the recording?
Yeah, I enjoyed the book very much. I didn't read the original Next Million of the Millionaire Next Door, so I didn't go. I have a lot to go on. What I should say, the critique I had over the book is that I feel there's a lot of references to the critique the first book had and addressing them, which didn't resonate with me because I didn't know there was critique. I felt that they could have left that part out a little bit. There's too much on that. But the overall, I think the chapters are very nice. My favorite chapter was chapter 7, the investing of the resources. I quite like the investing aspect. They show how the investors usually put their money and where they put their money just to generate more. But the overall book for me was very informing and I quite enjoyed it.
Thanks, Mornay. Casper,
yeah, for me, like I referred to earlier, I had a lot of questions about a lot of things, which this book answered for me. Back to what I said previously about earning a salary that you can't spend. I didn't really see the meaning until I read that basically all of the millionaires that they interviewed in this book, they get satisfaction out of building wealth or prosperity, like you like to refer to. They do not get any satisfaction out of spending it on unnecessary stuff. A few quotes that really I can make bumper stickers for myself out of this. We don't compare ourselves. We're not trying to outrun anyone. It summarizes a critical part of the book for me in a nice way. Also, we're trying to have kids now, so I'm picking up tips from wherever I can. And one of the mothers said to her kids when she dropped her off at school, and a child was complaining about the state of their car compared to the friends, the expensive cars, and the mother just said, having all those things says how much they spent, not how much they are worth. And that's a complete eye-opener for me. So yeah, it's a lot of questions answered.
Yeah. Thank you very much for both of you. Thank you very much. I think overall I also enjoyed the book, the read. I think it reiterates a lot of key principle which is key to building wealth. And I think most probably for somebody that wants scientific evidence, the book is very much good researched with scientific evidence to a lot of the points that's made in the book, which makes it a nice read. I think there's a lot of value in the book. I agree with Mornay. I don't think it was necessary to defend some of the points that was made in the original book. They could have just shared the points, and whoever had critique could have satisfied themselves. So I agree with that part. So thank you very much for everybody that was part of our discussion today. And yeah, we are going to discuss the investment book in our next session next month. We'll share it in the next week or so on our Facebook page so that you know about it. And if you, like we said on the kickoff, if you want to also read the book, then you're more than welcome. Then we can perhaps have a more interactive session. But share with us, and we'll have it uploaded in terms of on our Facebook page as well as YouTube. Go and like it and reshare. And thank you for those of you that attended. And thank you also very much for giving your thanks for us in terms of the chat. So, and have an awesome day and an awesome month. And we're looking forward to a lot of these discussions online, but also in person with you. You're more than welcome to contact us. Thank you very much. Bye.